It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this Wellness Wednesday, if I'm in now, we're talking about schemas. And I'm going to use Assassin's Creed Shadows as an example of how schemas get in the way of understanding. And it's going to make some people mad. Please just hear me out. Because the complaint I'm hearing about this game, and it's a great game, right? But that it's just Ghost of Tsushima. And I'm like, where do we begin? Because Ghost of Tsushima, first of all, is an homage to Kurosawa films, like straight up. There's a place you could play it in black and white. And Assassin's Creed Shadows is more a romanticized version of Japanese history, but there is a lot of flippy. But, you know, the problem is the Assassin's Creed formula predates Ghost of Tsushima, and Ghost of Tsushima borrows from Assassin's Creed a lot in terms of the melee combat. But Assassin's Creed, the melee combat was there, and then it was gone, and then it was there again, it was gone. It was sort of their mirage, and Assassin's Creed has veered really wildly, and so return to Assassin's Creed formula is seen as a ripoff of a game that sort of, I mean, there's only so many permutations of sword combat, third-person action gaming you can get. But also, the time periods with Ghost of Tsushima and the era of Oda Nobunaga are hundreds of years apart. And it's almost like going, Vikings are the same as medieval England because white people, right? And if you place it in Ireland or Scotland, well, it's the same. And that's why I'm like, ooh, where do we begin on these criticisms? And I first started going, when people started saying that Elden Ring was a great depiction of Celtic myth. And no, it's not. It's a FromSoft game. There is nothing really mythic. The idea of a sacred feminine that is the source of a rot in the world would never be done in Celtic myth. And the gender bending would be done very, very differently. It was its own thing. And the problem with this stuff is that we think in schemas, hence the title of this video. And our brains force things into an existing schema just because creating a new one is a lot of work. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's do the help support this channel. If you like this stuff, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. If you like really wonky content like this, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. And let's go back here. I'm trying to get everything open so I can read it. So schemas in psychology are useful. That's why we use them, right? I mean, we go through the motions with certain things. You know, somebody puts out their hand, you shake their hand. That's a schema. Other people don't like to shake hands, so like, hey, fist bump, right? But we collect stuff, and we have these patterns of thoughts and behavior. When somebody sneezes, you say bless you or gesundheit, you know. So these are things we rely on to get through a day without overload. We also use schema to recognize similar things of the same type. So when you're going around petting every type of dog or every type of cat in Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's me. You are using schema. You recognize that, you know, the Golden Akita is a different type of dog than the black and white one, but they are still both dogs. They are still both Akita schema, right? A Shiba Inu is a different kind of dog, you know, that kind of thing. Chorizo in Far Cry is also a dog, but very different type of dog. Same thing with cats. We can separate differences, but lump them into the same thing. And what this does is gives us a series of expectations. Now, the thing you have to be very careful with schema is that they can become stereotypes if they are too rigid. And that's my concern with the use of schema, the Ghost of Tsushima schema, to apply to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Because it's flattening Japanese history. And some people are like, rah, rah, rah. People love to fight about Japanese history. And the thing we have to remember about the history from that era, when after stuff started getting written down, but before really meticulous contemporaneous records were kept, stuff got fudged. So we have little glimpses, some of which may be coded, some of which may not be entirely accurate. We know certain people were removed from certain timelines. Like I believe, Egypt or Sumeria used to just erase people from history if somebody else came into power and didn't like them. And we get into fights about, say, what Cleopatra looked like. And yes, there is an element of fictionalized. There is an element of wushu movies in Shadow, but all Asian cinema is not Kurosawa. Kurosawa is a very, very particular thing that is not in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, I'm playing in immersive mode, so I'm getting the original Japanese and the original Portuguese and all that stuff. But there are certain very Western tells in Kurosawa. Kurosawa, at the time he was making films, was criticized as schlock for being too Western. They didn't use the word schlock, but it was too Western. It was not keeping with the Japanese traditions. And so there were, gunslinger Western tropes, such as, the dual mode in Tsushima, where you sort of drew and you could just fight the guy flat on. None of that is in Assassin's Creed Shadows because it is not Kurosawa. There are certain character types that kind of appear. If you don't know the films of Kurosawa, then the characters in the original Star Wars. So you do have the fallen mentor in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but that is an Assassin's Creed trope of some sort of family member gets killed. That's why you go on some sort of revenge plot, become assassin, win game, right? That goes back all the way to Ezio's family in Assassin's Creed 2. And this is the thing. People are putting AC Shadows into their Ghost of Tsushima schema because both Japanese, instead of into the history of Assassin's Creed, because the Japanese is overriding the franchise stuff. The petting of dogs and cats does not come from petting the foxes in Ghost of Tsushima. It comes from the stuff in, the can you pet the dog meme, but also, the cats in Valhalla. So this is the challenge with schemas and how they can go awry. And schema work in schema therapy, in psychology, is restructuring your schemas to work better for you. And this is something of a challenge because it means doing more work in the short term for more nuance or accuracy or whatever you were setting out to achieve in the long term. And it can feel quite thankless when you first start. But as somebody who did it, it is useful. Here's an example that may be a bit more positive, right? um, the schema for a gamer, for instance, right? Like, to me, there are cool people that is the only group in the world who kind of accepts my neurodivergent, gender atypical weirdness. Like, not quite, but my little sliver of the Venn diagram that overlaps is much better than the rest of the world. That's my schema for gamer. Somebody else's may be, oh, incels that don't shower or something, right? Like, those are associations, and they're based on past experiences, and they set up expectations. And this is the thing about schemas. If you don't like the negative ones that are applied to you, be very careful with negative schema with other people. And I do think that when we talk about things like media criticism or gender or any of the really thorny problems facing us culturally right now, schemas really get in the way. Because if you've had a bad experience with, say, some sort of feminist group, and you come across something labeled feminism, you're going to brace for that bad experience, right? And possibly end up with some false positives. Similarly, if you've been treated quite badly by, I mean, my experience with gaming communities was stuff like Halo and some of the really, really nasty guild drama that went on during like the peak of the World of Warcraft days. So when I got into Dark Souls, I was really, I thought it was going to be a really rough ride. I thought it was going to be the same kind of hazing that you get in shooters, because, well, predominantly male audience, very much a get good crowd. But no, the mutual pain binds everybody. And I found that, I mean, there are assholes in every fandom, right? But I found that the FromSoft players were more supportive and encouraging than, Bungie communities. And that doesn't mean, if you've had a good experience with Bungie, great, that's your schema, right? I'm just telling you what my experience was, both as a player and as a journalist. Every run-in I had with Bungie was fucking awful. So that Bungie bad is my schema. Like, EA always loses my appointments. Fuck you, EA. And yet, then I have to kind of go, okay, but, I have friends that work for certain EA subsidiaries, and they're good people. I have to watch that, right? And I do think that there's the schema now of Ubisoft sucks. And I think that is a cognitive structure that may not be totally fair. Now, hear me out, okay? Because it's not that Ubisoft hasn't done anything bad. It's done plenty bad. We'll see what's going on with the splitting of the company in Tencent. Because, I mean, Ubi has been fending off takeovers, hostile takeovers, for years now. So splitting it so that they don't get a hold of some of their more creative IPs, but they can just flood money into their cash cow franchise. Is it like Assassin's Creed? I mean, there are occasional big shifts with Assassin's Creed. The redesigned parkour in Unity, the jump to more RPG style in Origins and Odyssey got super bloated in Valhalla, pulled back in Mirage, and I'm happy again. So, okay, let them do it. And Far Cry, every Far Cry game plays essentially the same. It's a formula. Like, how bad can they screw it up? We're not going to see any failed states that are like the Chinese. That's all we're basically going to get with the Tencent thing. But, Ubisoft does some cool things too. Like, apologize when they think they've made a mistake. You may not agree with what they think they own the mistakes. I mean, when the whole scandal broke with bad treatment at companies, people got fired, things happened, and and I remember saying at the time that Ubi is just the first domino to fall. Wait. And it really wasn't. I mean, the whole EA wife thing, EA's lousy practices were known long before Ubisoft, but Ubisoft kind of happened in its own space. And then the Riot thing was kind of quiet. And then the Blizzard Activision thing, for some odd reason, people either went, yeah, we knew they were bad. But, like, everybody's done some garbage stuff. And when I ask people, why is UB essentially evil? Well, they have DRM. Well, what do you mean? Well, I have to take an account to play certain Ubisoft games. And I said, well, that's because it has crossplay. Monster Hunter Wilds is the same. Oh, but nobody checked why that feature was there. I mean, I had to sign up for an Alarian account to play Baldur's Gate. Now, apparently that's because I was in early access. I don't know. But, you know, that was a very invasive pop-up because they want your data. They want you to sign up. That is a common corporate practice that for some odd reason UB takes it on the chin from some people because schema, Ubisoft sucks. Continue to feed expectations and feedback loop based on that schema. Is this entirely fair? Well, Ubisoft did a cool thing that if you pre-ordered, you actually got additional content as a thank you. It's not pay to win. And, you know, oh, the currency, there's skins. It's the same as Fortnite. It's 5 screens in. It is not in your face. It is not like, Jesus, the in-app purchases. What was it, Dead Space 3? That was ridiculous. That was right in the game. Yay. Right? And I think part of it is that Ubisoft is not an American company. So it doesn't punish people for criticism the same way, you know, Blizzard blacklisted me. CDPR blacklisted me. Well, they said no. They wouldn't let me get access because, I wasn't super glowing about everything in The Witcher 2. But Ubi lets people criticize them. And so the schema has built up, criticize Ubisoft. You see how it works? Now, is this a race to the bottom? Absolutely, because we say we want companies that will listen and accept criticism and respond to feedback, but we don't really reward them because, they responded to the criticism that I didn't agree with. Well, that's something a little different. And why don't you agree with that criticism? Well, because there's another schema, the idea that games should affirm the individual player instead of challenge the individual player. Now, I'm not talking about subverting expectations as a cliche. I'm talking about, creating a character that isn't automatically likable, or at least not conventionally likable, and taking you on a journey, or something like Trails in the Sky. I had played so many JRPGs that I'm like, no, I'm burned out. I don't want to. They're so samey. And people are like, play Trails in the Sky, play Trails in the Sky, play Trails in the Sky. And sure enough, I really like the characters in Trails in the Sky, right? But my schema was JRPGs, samey. It's not that I don't like them. It's just kind of the same every single time. And how many Final Fantasy Reduxes can you really play? Trails is different. Right? And so with Trails, I now have a new schema in my mind. Instead of JRPG, there's Final Fantasy, there's Trails, right? And then there's all the other ones I played that I don't even remember the names of because they were just like Final Fantasy clones. And we do sort of get very set in our ways with games because some people want to just pick up and play and be awesome right away. If you've played a lot of From Software games, there are basic things that are the same. And a lot of people skipped Sekiro because it was very much more pushed into a parry playstyle. And a lot of FromSoft games, you can get through the entire game and never use a parry. I got very good at parrying because of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. And that pays off in AC Shadows. And I do not remember any parry mechanics in Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe there were, but I remember the Tsushima combat. It was very stylish, but you felt powerful. You didn't feel like, 2 hits and you're dead, because Naomi's a little, she starts the game, she's 17 years old. And so I think that in gaming and in life, if you get too attached to those schema and you're not willing or able to form new ones, and there is some executive function stuff in here, which is why I'm saying willing or able. Some people would like to, and they just can't. Just like I can't get used to the new Battlestar Galactica no matter how much I try. Starbuck is still a dude in my mind. I got used to the original. That is Galactica for me, a shining planet known as Earth, the Daggets, like all that stuff, Muppet rules. Boxy as a kid, I can't get used to the new one. So that's an example of me failing to form a new schema regarding Battlestar Galactica. Other things I'm able to sort of MCU versus Marvel Comics, those are separate tracks. Maybe because there were already different Earths in Marvel anyway. Lord of the Rings, I have not been able to form a new schema for Rings of Power yet. I can't. It ruins my enjoyment of it. Whereas other things, you just sort of, I'm not thinking about this as an adaptation. The Castlevania series, for instance, though I fell off Nocturne. I'm not up to date. I have tried really hard to just think of that as its own thing. But it's hard because I have that previous reference. So no one is immune from being unable to form new schemas. But it can be done. And it can be done when we see the benefit of forming a new framework for things. And the challenge here is it is work. And we can't do it for everything. If you move, you have to form new schemas about how you navigate the world, right? If you change jobs, you have to form new schema for that job. And change is tiring. Openness to new experiences is a character trait. I happen to be fairly high in it. Some people are not. That can be changed, but it's gonna sort of be gradually over time. So if you do not form new schema well, this is not a character flaw. This is a challenge to be aware of. So when you have a knee-jerk, you can go, all right, this is just, chafing against my existing schema of this stuff. I kind of know what that is. And there is no requirement to form new things. When somebody says, oh, I'm just set in my ways, that's what they mean. But in terms of learning, in terms of, I think, not just mental health, but like brain health, new experiences, novel experiences have been shown to fend off cognitive decline. Now, this is an area of science that we still don't know a ton about. Correlation is not causation, but people who are constantly learning new things and engaging and having to, rework those pathways tend to do better. And once people sort of lose that connection to the world, the ongoing novel experiences, then, older people start to slip. So that's one thing. Forming new schema, good for the brain. And how do you do it? Well, schema is based on heuristics. They're based on assumptions, and they are culturally specific. For an example, handing a business card to someone in North America is like, hey, look, it's a Far Cry sticker, but you hand it that way, right? One-handed. In Asia, it's two-handed. This is rude, right? Two-handed. Different schema for handing a business card. So being aware of the fact that not everybody does things in the same way is the first step to make it easier to learn. And then it's about checking your assumptions. And this is extremely important when it comes to your schema surrounding conflict. Because a lot of us think that if a bad experience happened in the past, even if it was with a completely different person in completely different circumstances, it's going to happen the same way again. And so you end up with accusations being flung around that hurt other people. And then you get this cascading crap and you create a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You know, you did that on purpose. You're being inconsiderate. You're doing it, you know, this is deliberate. It may not be. And erring on the side of giving other people benefit of the doubt is a good schema to form. That doesn't mean be an idiot. That doesn't mean no doubt. It's, okay, this can still be a problem for me, but I'm going to assume the person didn't mean to until I get clear evidence otherwise. If I tell somebody clearly that something is bothering me a couple times and they're like, too bad, okay, maybe we got something there. But are they upset? You know, are they in an agitated state? Maybe they're not thinking clearly. These are all things that you can factor into your social schema, because I notice a lot of people blowing up communities and relationships because they jump at shadows the minute things get tense. And there's a lot of it involving what happened in high school, or what happened in middle school, or things like that. These are formative, yes. But at some point, you have to stop judging the adult world based on who you were in high school. I say this as somebody who had to. I had to realize that people didn't see the loser nerd anymore. They saw somebody with status and some profile. And that's not me being arrogant. This is what I was told. And so it's like, all right, I have to stop assuming that every person that comes at me has the power to take away my job and ruin my life and deny me opportunities. They're just people being noisy. And because I changed that assumption, my behavior changed. I didn't consciously change my behavior. It's just, this is not worth doing. You know, I'll occasionally respond to somebody on the off chance that they actually do mean well and they're not just being a troll. I said it to somebody this week, like, hey, if you really mean this comment, then do this going forward, because this is really ironic. And if you don't, I'm just going to dismiss you as a troll. There's a shining example of giving someone maximum benefit of the doubt. Now, they have a choice about what to do with it. And I hope they just take it at face value and make the adjustment. If they don't, oh well, nothing I can do about it. You know, disappointing, but not earth-shattering. And that is what you have to do to heal from some of these bad experiences in your past. And we all have them to greater or lesser degrees. You know, I don't think anybody in the gaming space exactly had an idyllic childhood, though more and more gaming's becoming more mainstream, so we can't say that. And that's the other thing about gaming, is that as it becomes more mainstream, the schema surrounding players and community are going to change as gaming gets bigger and the sub-communities multiply, and there will be different cultural rules for different sub-communities. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's an indication of the maturation of the industry. But what it means is, like I went from a Bungie schema and discovered that, FromSoft community was very different. It's the same, Don't expect your experiences with Grand Theft Auto to be the same as Legend of Zelda players. And I think we really need to start thinking about things that way, in a more granular way. Diversify your schema instead of this thing of gamer. Like, okay, that's fine as the top of the pyramid, right? But it's the same thing. Man, woman, these categories are too big to be effectively predictive. And when you realize it's too big, it's like, okay, what kind of man? What kind of woman? And you realize you sort of get a flow chart based on a bunch of factors: socioeconomic class, disability, neurodivergence, so on and so forth. What games you like, what foods you like, right? What country you're in, all that stuff. Subdividing your schema, making it more granular, will result in better, more accurate decision making, and will prevent you from making predictions that get you, a less than positive result. So if you have any questions about this that I can address on Feedback Friday or something like that, put them in a comment, or sign up for a Leanna Cares session to work through this stuff. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Patreon support, super important. Patreon.com/LeannaK. And buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Got some donations after Monday's video. That was awesome. Thank you for that, people who donated. Keep them coming. Thanks for watching, and be well.